Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. Nicholas Sacco here with you for another episode 12 of Season 7, or episode 185 if you're counting. From the beginning, we surged late, and it was enough to help deliver another comprehensive victory, this time by 45 points over North Melbourne at Marvel Stadium, despite plenty of changes and a less experienced outfit on the field. Today, we discuss the key points to emerge from the win over the Roos, highlight some of the underrated performances that helped fill the void of some experienced players missing, and we see what our fans had to say thanks to SpeakPie. And sometimes we've been doing this podcast for a long time, and it's funny how these episodes can sometimes imitate what goes on at the club. We had 4 ready to go last night, came to 3 this morning, and it ends up being a 2-man pod, but that still means I'm very happy to be joined by Marcus Callahan today. Welcome, mate.
Thank you, Nico. Good to be here despite just the two of us. Looking forward to unpacking another Pies win.
Been a while, I think, between drinks when we've just had the two of us in, but should still be a very, very fine episode. Where did we watch from on Saturday night?
Centre Half Pine.
Nice.
For me. Yep. So didn't make it down to Marvel. Not my most favourite of establishments. Were you there yourself, Nico?
Yeah, I was. Got some decent seats thanks to work. Otherwise, I'm not sure had I have also made the trip down. It's just not one of those stadiums that I enjoy making my way down to watch footy. But nonetheless, for Collingwood, sometimes you make those sacrifices, and we've got 2 more to go this year, but we're just going to have to cop it.
Tell us the story. What was the location? What row? On the wing?
It was, between wing and half forward, level 2. So very nice seats. Very happy with where it ended up being. You get a nice view of the ground, obviously with it being slightly smaller than the MCG. It works out pretty well. But yeah, still just travelling there, the parking, just still the atmosphere was just a bit off for me. And doesn't help when it says it's a sold out event and it ends up only being a 40-odd thousand crowd. So not ideal, but 4 points nonetheless, Marcus, and very impressive to see us win it the way we did in the end.
No question. We did ham up. This is a bit like North's grand final, or one of their marquee games for the season. So I'm sure their supporters turned out, and they were vocal, or at least until three-quarter time or thereabouts. So look, it was one of those games where it was frustrating that we just couldn't get the ascendancy, but I think it was another case of our maturity and experience really overcoming a side that tried to put a performance together that was well thought out. I think their coaching staff should be applauded, but whatever happened at halftime, I was just absolutely rapt that we could change our game style, Nico, because it really was a game of 2 halves.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we had a kick straight in that third quarter, you probably feel like the game's beyond doubt much earlier. So very impressed nonetheless. Let's get to some of those players and who they might be. Thanks to the pie that caught our eyes. And Marcus, who did we go for from Saturday night?
Yeah, I've gone with Ed Allen for this episode, Nico. I feel like he's another one that's going to be talked about a lot whenever we do have a few more injuries and coming in and playing a role. Best of my understanding about Ed's season is he's played mainly in the middle at VFL level, but come in and play mainly a half-back type of role, rebounding. Quiet in the first half, and probably not the pie that caught my eye had we not got off the chain. So I acknowledge there's a bit of that sort of, once we had momentum, he was hitting his straps with the 10 touches in the last term. But I just see so much athleticism, so much speed, and a guy that has all the athletic talents to go into the midfield once we see Steele and Pendles and Crispy move on. And I'm just very excited by what he can bring, because I think his pedigree with his dad is obviously very strong, and he's probably being played out of position at the moment. But once he does get a bit more size and a bit more experience, look out for him alongside Ned Long and Nick Daicos for the next 10 years, mate. I'm telling you right now.
Well, it was a great opportunity for him to showcase that a little bit more on Saturday with some of those key experienced heads out of the side. And you're right, that half-back wing type of role, capable of playing there, maybe further down the track once he gets a bit more senior footy into him. But yeah, to see him used purely in that midfield was definitely a sight to behold. One of his better games at the senior level, and I'm sure with some more experience under his belt, we're going to get more performances like that. He was one of many, I felt.
No doubt, and it's speaking to that broader depth story that we're very proud of at Magpie Land right now. From where you saw him, or did you take any note of his speed? Because I think for a guy who's 190 centimetres plus, he does have pretty good toe.
It was something that was always in his repertoire coming in, and that was part of the reason why I felt we ended up picking him in the draft. I think the fact that speed remained consistent throughout the match, and combining with Coxie in that last quarter late in the game when the match was pretty much sewn up, but still finding the energy to run and carry the way he did and set up opportunities inside 50 was a promising sign. And for somebody that's been teetering in and out of that starting 22, I thought that was a pretty critical moment and just showing that, hey, I'm definitely capable of being in this side in the long term. So, no, the speed was certainly there and was limited in the first half, as was many of our players. But, yeah, definitely felt like it came alive a bit in that second half. So, nice to see that from Ed. I went with Jack Crisp, and I mentioned this fair bit in my On the Siren reaction, which you can view on YouTube if you've missed it. But very quiet to half-time, Crispy. 3 touches and 3 tackles was all he had at his disposal, and just felt something was off. And then as the second half commenced, noticed that he was put in the centre bounce straight away and had a look at the stats, noticed he hadn't attended a centre bounce stoppage once throughout the match. And obviously Fly moves some magnets around, goes straight into the midfield, and what happens? I think he became a pretty critical cog into us winning that game. Obviously, a lot will be touched on Ned and Bo and Nick and Josh, of course, and they were all superb in their own right. But I just felt like him being injected changed the game a little bit. The experience he has on hand to create strong running patterns, get into the right spaces, linking up really well with the likes of Daicos and Long, allowed him to finish in the second half purely 13 touches, 7 tackles. He had 9 score involvements, kicked the goal himself, and had 3 direct goal assists in the final term to go with a total of 9 centre bounce attendances, which all came in the second half. So I don't think it was a coincidence we turned things around in the second half with Crispy being involved, and we were praising his role in the Fremantle game after he came in at quarter time, playing a bit more inside mid. It's a luxury we have, and I'm glad that we're able to utilise Crispy in that fashion. I'd just like to see it a little bit more. I think that move could have been made a little earlier just to open some things up and allowed the likes of the Daicos boys and Ned to get involved in the game at an even greater level than they did from the start of the match. So, yeah, I was really happy with Crispy.
I'm glad you mentioned the Freo match there, because for me, it was either the Melbourne final in 2023 or perhaps even the prelim against the Giants. He's the guy when the going gets tough that can go in there and start winning the footy back. He's so clean, rarely goes to ground, good overhead, and isn't afraid to look in the corridor as well. And I think that's something we massively lacked through the first half of this game. So fantastic effort from Crispy once more. And to have a guy like that who doesn't get enough praise, and at another club, had he been given similar opportunity, you wonder if he's more in the media circles being spoken about, not as just Mr. Consistent, but as like a genuine A-grade talent. But I think because we have so many stars and he has to play so many different roles, we're used to him stepping up, but it's not like Jack Crisp goes and does the same thing each week.
Yep.
But you just love knowing that we have the flexibility to put him in there. And he's a big boy. He's absolutely a big boy footballer.
And maybe it was just from the vantage point I was watching the game from, but you could just see how hard he's working both directions. And once he was involved more playing further up the ground, as opposed to being a bit more settled in the back line or towards half back, the amount of opportunities that opened up because of it. You talk about going through the corridor with him being in there. Well, his presence there allows us to be more confident going into the corridor, because you can see it's Crispy with the ball. He takes a bit more time with his disposal. I think only once he was caught under pressure with holding the ball from a stoppage. I think every other time he was making the right decisions to link up with handballs or lower his eyes going inside 50. So, yeah, I was just super impressed with Crispy's game. Wasn't even mentioned in the best, which probably doesn't happen because of some of the performances of some other players, which I want to touch on. And it starts with Ned, because a monster game from him once again. 14 tackles he laid. Just a superb performance from him. And, I mean, we continue to marvel at what he's been able to produce since being a permanent fixture of this senior side. I mean, it was just crazy looking back in hindsight that he was even a sub in the early parts of the season, knowing what he's been capable of. But if it wasn't known before, it's known now that he's got to remain a permanent fixture in this team, because what he's been able to do and the tone that he is setting with his pressure and his ferocity at the contest each and every time, it's a sight to behold. And it's no wonder Fly's got a liking to him, because I think he just epitomises what he tries to bring to this team each and every week.
Do we have a most improved award in the AFL, Nico? I don't know these things.
I don't think so.
If there was, is Ned Long in the conversation for most
Far
improved player in the AFL.
Bias,
we bring a Collingwood bias,
of course.
But is he in the conversation?
Well, no one else springs to mind immediately the way that Ned Long does. And for the role that he plays in such a high-pressure situation where you're getting a lot of the football, I think it needs to be noted that he'd probably be right up there. It has to be.
I think he's taken some Brownlow votes in this early part of the season away from...
Do we have to switch Nick Daicos Brownlow?
Well, I thought about this in the shower last night. I was like, do we need another new segment? No, of course not. But look, Ned Long is just developing at a rate that is kind of unseen. I think that there's players from other clubs who we've probably not got as close an eye on that would be doing similar things in the yards they're taking to cement that senior selection. But it's not just the fact that he's gone from being on the fringes to the sub and then just getting, a positional option at a half forward like a Lockie Sullivan or a half back like an Ed Allen. Like, he is a central cog in our midfield, if not the central cog in our midfield. Of course, Darcy Cameron being the ruckman, but the way that Ned Long also, I reckon he's a bloody intelligent footballer. Yeah. There's something about his IQ on the field. You can see that he's trying to execute the game plan with every step that he takes and every little move that he makes. And it's, once again, we got smashed in contest in that first half. They were way more fierce, North Melbourne. But between Crispy and Ned Long looking into the corridor and allowing our forwards to have more instinct play and just crash kick it forward, get it over the top. We know that that's the way we like to score, and I think Jamie Elliott's probably as good as any forward in the comp right now at getting that kick over the top, that Joe the Goose. And it starts with players like Ned Long looking inside. When we go slow and to the side, we have time in our match style for that, but when we score in bursts, that's really what I think as fans we'd love to see, knowing how to use those gears. And Ned to come from, Hawthorn and hardly getting a game and delisted to now, you cannot see a Collingwood fixture this year where he's not named as a follower, Nico.
So he had 6 clearances, which was the equal most for a Collingwood player on the field, and 2 direct goal assists, which was the second highest behind Crispy, who I mentioned before. Marcus, my mail is that Tom Mitchell will be returning to the senior team.
I have heard this a couple of weeks ago.
Against Hawthorn. Now, the rumour is that he'll come in as a sub, which is understandable given he hasn't played any senior footy in over 12 months. But should he get through to next week or so unscathed, he definitely doesn't displace Ned in this team. But how do you see that going forward and in this next few weeks, knowing that we know obviously what Tom can bring as an inside midfielder, very hard at it, massive clearance winner, which is something we need, knowing that we lost the clearances again on Saturday night. But gee, it's a tough scenario when you've got to try fit those two in somehow.
It's just going to be tantalising at match selection. And look, I think Collingwood's selection integrity this season and in years gone by under Fly's reign has really been very, very good. We're rewarding players who deserve to be on the park and are going to give us the best opportunity to win based on our matchups. But I just feel like Tom Mitchell is at a stage of his... If it was 27, 28-year-old Tom Mitchell, like Brownlow vibes, then Ned Long might have some competition. But if we think about the makeup of our midfield, like he can go into the ruck every now and then as well, Ned Long, and just hold his own. Like he doesn't need to win taps, but going up against Sherry on the weekend, I know he's absolute monster Tristan Sherry, but Ned Long just gives you that point of difference again by providing that other option. But he'll go up for the tap, but then he's on the ground trying to win it, and he's just throwing his weight around. So I think Tommy Mitchell he came to the club for that reason, and his quick hands are still very good from what I've seen at VFL level, but he hasn't played footy for a long time. He's not getting any younger, so it's going to be fascinating to watch him come back into the side, and he deserves respect, Tom Mitchell, for the accolades he's collected in his career. But do you want to stunt the growth of a guy like Ned Long, who's 22, he's the same age as Nick Daicos, and doing incredible things for our midfield? So I think we'll all be jumping on the coaching panel's backs if Ned's playing less midfield minutes and Tommy Mitchell comes in for a role. Because what's interesting is that we have been losing the clearances, but because our defence is so well set,
and we'll touch on that,
we are not losing matches, even though it's a clear, I think, an important indicator round to round. So a lot in what I just said, Nico, but I think Tommy Mitchell has a place in this side. It's probably just later in the year.
Well, he might not even come back this week if we're expecting the likes of Pendles and Steele and a few others to make their way back into the side. So
and the Hawks are a very quick team, a young team. So is a guy like Tommy Mitchell the type that you need for this match? I know.
Especially as a sub, if you need to inject some pace into the game later on. 100%.
Yeah, so that's a watch.
Definitely so much to look at. We'll continue on the midfield, but we'll touch on the defence very shortly. So Nick Daicos, 10 touches to half-time. Another one of those that really struggled to get into the game, had to deal with a bit of a tag, but ended up with 38 disposals at 730 metres gained, along with 5 clearances and 4 tackles. So he was superb alongside Josh, who had plenty of the footy as well, going across half-back and had, I think, 640-odd metres gained as well. Do you see Nick in that Brownlow tracker scenario again for Saturday night? Very tough considering some of the amazing performances we saw from plenty others over the weekend, but I think it was also a credit to Nick to continuing to fight hard, continuing to get that speed in and creating chances throughout the middle and the corridor that allowed our forwards to get the best look.
Yeah, there's no question that as the game grew on, he got better, and I think he probably gets the 1 vote, which moves him to 8 for the season for those playing at home. But I just feel like even though he was running more freely than what I've seen in the last month of football, at least, it's the disposal, Nico, that's probably still just not quite there for me. And again, I'm not sure if that's because Nick's been building his match fitness and trying to play more games injury-free. Again, I think the jury's out as to whether he had one in the first place. But Nick Daicos last year and the year before is ducking, weaving, and just hitting targets that most players can't hit in the competition.
Yep.
But what I've seen from the stoppage over the last sort of 4 to 6, and he's been carrying a nickel here and there, is sort of just getting it on the boot, and it hasn't been hitting the target at the way that we know that he can. So I think that I'm really encouraged by how he ran the game out, and I'm encouraged by the fact that he got his hands on the footy so much. But let's be real, after we kicked the first probably 2 or 3 goals that last term, North had given up. I think Nick had about 5 touches in 2 minutes in junk time. So does that elevate his statistics artificially? Perhaps. But whatever we're seeing is on the right track, because last year I was kind of calling, or if he's not improving, do we need to give him a spell? But I think all of those fears of mine have been put to bed. So an excellent performance, but probably gets only the 1 vote for mine.
I think some statistics still symbolise your point about, yes, he's getting plenty of the football, and yes, he's able to extract some clearance. So he had 12 inside 50s and 12 12 inside 50s and 12 score involvements, but he went at 60% disposal efficiency, which was the 3rd worst from any Collingwood player on the ground. The other 2 were Brodie Mychek and Mason Cox, who, of course, you're probably not looking at that statistic too kindly. So, yes, it's a great point you make. It's fantastic that he's getting plenty of the footy, and, I can't remember how many of those were in the last quarter, but I think it was close to 17 or 18, so quite significant. And it did play some type of role in us getting a roll on in that final term, but you're right. He was certainly more careful with his disposal in recent years, and maybe that's something we'd just like to see a bit more in his game. Yeah,
for sure. I think if he builds into sort of the rounds post by with a bit more polish to how he's going physically, that's going to show up as better disposal efficiency. And I think when we've seen Nick at his absolute best over his short career, Nico, we've seen a better split of his contested versus the uncontested possessions. And on the weekend, I don't reckon he had nearly as many contested as uncontested. There you go. Which just, again, tells me he's probably playing a bit more outside, which we know Ned Long's in there to do the dirty work. But I still reckon when Nick is fierce at the contest, he's playing his best footy. But it'll be intriguing to see how that dynamic pans out with Big Ned Long.
On the defensive unit, and I'll touch on the individuals in a moment, but it was clear that the Roos were playing pretty big possession game in that first half, and it worked arguably. I'm sure it was frustrating at times for us to try and contend, but they were just chipping it around, just waiting for that right ball inside 50, although half the time I still felt like they went pretty deep with those entries and were just hoping for that ball to hit the ground. And yes, occasionally it did work, but as we started to tighten up a bit more defensively and block some of those entries via the corridor, and also getting ourselves sorted deeper inside our own defensive 50, that allowed us to then convert on turnover, which we love doing. And I think we ended up, so 5 of our last 9 goals came from turnovers and defensive intercepts, which is our game to a T. That's exactly how Fly wants us to play, and it's a credit to our back line for setting up a structure that allows us to do so. But what do you think that shift was between the first half and the second half from a defensive standpoint that sort of threw North Melbourne's possession game out the window after the main break?
Going through the corridor, I really feel like us getting back to putting some speed on the ball was the difference. I feel like they were trying to make it a game of chess and not creating opportunities for us to score from turnover, which probably speaks to the high uncontested mark game. But their method has been questioned despite that being their strategy to try and prevent us from going the other way. And to some effect, it worked. Like their tackle pressure was pretty good. Their contest work, we know they outworked us at the source in the first half. But once again, couldn't do it for 4 quarters. And the positional changes that I don't know if we made that many positional changes for our defensive system. I just feel like we were way more aggressive through the guts, and that created more scoreboard pressure, and then things really started to unravel for North. So it's just a testament once again to our defensive system, because even in the first half, we leaked a few cheap goals, and I thought, well, we've hit the scoreboard, and then they'd get one back, and that was a bit frustrating. But for me, this game was won in the midfield, and it was when we were prepared to take on more risk that we actually benefited from playing more on instinct and greater scoreboard pressure, as mentioned.
Isaac Quaynor highlighted that aggressiveness, I felt. Finished with 23 disposals, 8 marks. He had 10 intercept possessions, 430 metres gained, and also finished with 4 score involvements and 5 tackles. You mentioned it in our group chat, Marcus. Curtis had a pretty good opening term and was set for a big night after his 3-week suspension. But Quaynor was able to not let that get to his head, and he didn't put his head down, was able to turn things around. And Curtis was pretty much unsighted, you could argue, for the remainder of the match. And I think that was just also due to Quaynor playing a bit more aggressively further up the ground and created some of those defensive chains that led to scores. I think this was one of his best games for the season, in my opinion. Agree?
Absolutely. And I think it's a true sign of his maturity and character being able... How often do you see Isaac Quaynor just get pushed over? And I know that one-on-one that he lost against Curtis was a bit of a tough one to
But it could have set
manage.
the tone for his night, and it didn't allow him. He didn't allow it to.
And so that's why I was so impressed with the way that he bounced back. He won some one-on-one contests. I thought his run and carry off the half-back line was very good. He was key in our directional changes as we transitioned more from that sort of switch and spread approach, and in the second half trying to run the North Melbourne players off their feet, which I think we did quite well. And to be playing on a guy like Paul Curtis, I reckon he's a bit of a barometer for North. When he's up and about and scoring freely, they seem to be going a little bit better. But a huge game from Q, and I just reckon he's building a very nice season, a nice body of work together over the last few weeks, Nico. So one that will need touchwood when it comes finals time.
Led the ground in intercept possessions with 10 and had the most marks from a Collingwood player throughout the night on 8. So you're right, certainly improving. As is who we are dubbing, are we now? Sir William Frampton, who arguably had his best game in Collingwood colours, period. 4 marks, 5 intercept possessions, 3 rebound 50s, but he kept Nick Larkey to 1 goal 1 for the night. And that was always a big problem coming into this match, because we tend to let the tall forwards get a handle of us, and Nick's done that before. No Darcy Moore, Braden Maynard being lost very early in the game. Billy, he's just playing with a confidence that we haven't seen before, and he's certainly making that position his own. I mean, what a benefit it is to have someone of his ilk and stature come in and be aggressive at the contest and play that role so well that, again, allowed us to start rebounding and moving forward. I just think you can't put this man down at the moment, and he's just playing with such a freedom that it's being beneficial for everyone in the Pies.
It's a joy to watch, once again, another guy that I had question marks over the role that he could play in this side, and how important it has been between Darcy Moore having some injuries in the early half of this season, and Jeremy Howe, we expect, will be rested again as the year grows on. Like, that's almost a given. So to have Bill Frampton there and looking more, not just confident, but his decision-making is really in keeping with what the game needs at that point in time. I feel like he's not just putting it on the boot as much. I feel like he's still, the occasional handball without looking happens with Bill, but all things considered, in a defensive unit that is system-based, for him to come in and plug that role is really the key 200-plus centimetre defender that we have. Without Maynard there, I thought it was exceptional to kick keep Nick Larkey to just the one goal, Nico, because he's touted us up historically and probably thought he was going to be getting 4 or 5 on a guy like Billy Frampton, who's probably on paper a lesser talent, but it just speaks volumes of the continuity and the confidence that's growing that for him from this extended run of games. It must be the longest run of games he's had without going out of the side since he's
probably
come to the
very
Pies.
Close to it. I would assume so.
So he's benefiting hugely, and it begs the question: once we have a full, healthy defensive unit, I mean, do we play a Howe, a Moore, and a Frampton, and a Maynard? Because it's pretty tall back there all of a sudden. But,
but
different traits.
I'm probably leaning towards absolutely doing so, because it then allows us to cover the spread amongst many forward lines throughout the competition. I mean, again, I'll look at that Adelaide game. If it's dry, if it's at the Adelaide Oval, for example, I'd love to have that full contingent. It allows the likes of a Dan Houston, a Harry Perriman to play some better roles further up the ground. I think Pez was one as well that performed pretty well on Saturday night.
He's another one like Quainer that's not setting the world on fire, but they're just playing their role beautifully, and they're part of a system, and they know what cog they are in that. So huge props to the defensive line.
And speaking of making great decisions, I felt Bo had one of his more high IQ games. He only had 8 disposals, but 7 of them were score involvements. And I think that was due to him lowering the eyes a little bit more, and it happened pretty often in that first term. And for me, just seeing those opportunities present because of his work ethic, his ability to go inside. I mean, he didn't have a centre bounce attendance stat to his name until after halftime as well. But when he went in there, he was able to come in and lay some pretty important tackles for us throughout the match. But I just felt like he just took that extra second each time he had the ball in his hand, because he's prone to just dump it long or just kick to no man's land. But he was actually a lot more careful with his disposal this time around, and I felt like he was able to have a very influential 8 disposal game as a result. Yeah,
I didn't realise how few again, like Bobby Hill, though, that we're not worrying about how many licks they have, but just what they do with the footy really can be a temperature gauge for how we're going. And there's no question that coaches have said to Bo, when you get the footy and you take off forward of centre, don't just kick it within 5 metres of the point post and it gets rushed. The one that he passed off to Jamie Elliott, where he did lower the eyes, is a prime example. And he had one last week as well. I can't remember who he hit up, but I'm just wrapped with that growth as well, because I called that out. I was like, it's you've got the ball, you're in acres of space, use it. Don't get the rush of blood. And we know a lot of young players take a little bit longer to lower the eyes and find the target, but he has got a beautiful kick on him. And seeing him at the centre square bounces and then also at the stoppage, I think he's probably another reason why we might be losing clearances early in games, because it's just not a part of his game that he's probably developed. But in due course, Nico, I think he could be an excellent tagger. He's got that defensive mindset, and it's wonderful that he's now getting the other way too and providing plenty of supply inside 50. So great growth in Bo's game over the last month.
It's a good segue with the clearances, because it is still a concern despite the fact that we have been able to win games in the last few weeks, and it is asking a lot of our backline to absorb that pressure that does come. And when you're not playing a North Melbourne who want to play a bit more possession, and you've got a side that wants to be quick and fast, potentially Hawthorn, for example, into this Friday night, that are going to put your defence under enormous intensity for longer periods of the match. What do you think that lack of clearance game comes down to? Because I don't think it's something that can be hid forever. And if we do get destroyed there continuously and it does start to result into some defeats, well, there's going to be a bit more of an eye on it. So do you see it as a systematic issue? Is it a personnel thing? Or what do you think that's leaning towards?
Yeah, I don't have a straight answer for you in terms of like why we are losing that. So would you say on balance we've probably lost more matches that statistic in matches this season?
See if I can find it specifically, but I'd say so.
Let's assume we've probably lost more than we've won. And again, I don't know if it's due to the makeup of our midfield or if our opposition have been so red hot on the fact that they need to get first access to the footy. I mean, that seems obvious for any game, but if they don't get on top early, they know that we will come. So getting a big margin kicked on you by the Pies early is going to be detrimental given we have an experienced outfit. But yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because usually we'd say if we're lagging in that indicator, then maybe we're losing contested footy, maybe we're losing ground, but that's not the case. We still seem to be set up so well behind the ball, but we can't think as supporters that going through an entire season of footy losing that is going to stack up come finals time, because we know it's a different way in which the game is played, and whatever's got us 4 points week to week throughout the season will carry forward, but we're going to have to adapt our game style. So I think that...
So have we just been fortunate that the teams we've played in the last few weeks aren't taking the most of their chances? Is it as simple as that?
Well, I think once again, because our defensive unit is set up so well, perhaps they are getting the kick forward, but are they getting a mark inside 50, or like you think about Josh Daicos, Dan Houston, Harry Perryman, even Isaac Quaynott, like their ground ball get game is excellent, and the way that we can restore order, even if it's just that quick sideways kick to start our next attack, I think we're one of the better sides at doing that. And also we can't forget the ruckman, Darcy Cameron, deliberately just running the other way, even if we get a kick forward, but the opposition comes back the other way and kind of really wins the coverage of the ground from that stoppage, not just the little clearance statistic that you get on the stat sheet. So I think that it's a massive watch. And I guess what's interesting though is we'd probably say up until the bye we've played more teams that we expect to play finals. We have a pretty good run
100%.
from them after the bye. So what's that about? Why are we losing clearances but then winning games by so much?
See, now you're going to find this funny because I've just gone back to have a look. So we've lost clearances in our last 3 games. We have won the clearance count in every other match this year, bar the Port Adelaide game, which of course we pumped them by in round 1.
We won by 90 points, but we lost the clearances.
Lost the clearances against Port, but we have won the clearance count in every other game this year. Now, mind you, most of those are maybe by 1, 2, 3, so not significant amounts.
That's what I was
but how fascinating is that?
Yeah, so it's essentially neutral.
Yeah.
But in the last month of footy, we've come out as the losers of that statistic.
And significantly too, not just by a small margin. So, yeah.
So is that sort of like the coaches saying we're happy to lose that because we back our system in so well and we know that our players are communicating and covering, even with personnel changes. Yeah, maybe this is like something that we need to revisit with a few more games through sort of, that post-bye.
Well, I'll put it this
period.
way. If those statistics are happening 12 months ago with the back line that we had,
leaky.
We're not winning a game.
So leaky.
Yeah. So obviously there's an enormous amount of trust in that defensive unit, which is fantastic. That's what will stack up in finals.
100%, and belief that comes from losing some 100%. Of the statistics that coaches would be reading out at 3/4 time and all the rest of it, but then still knowing that the players have got the communication and the chemistry to go the other way and do some damage on the scoreboard. So sounds like we're not going to work this one out tonight, mate.
No, we are not in the coaching panel, so therefore we'll move on. A couple more points before we wrap up this review. Jamie Elliott, another 5 goals. Again, just continues to fly under the radar. We've been recording for 25 minutes and we haven't even mentioned his name. He's just continuing to find the goals and he's got such a rich vein of form at the moment. He has to be considered now as an All-Australian forward because right now, you talk about a confidence player, well, he just seems to be on another level.
I'm just looking right now. He's coming 5th in the Coleman.
Yeah.
So
we've never had anyone close to a Coleman in the last decade or so.
I think that was saying on the commentary that Trav Cloak back in
2011, 12 maybe.
Yeah, something like that. Was the last one to kick even 50 goals in a season of footy. So Jamie Elliott, once again, alongside the host of other veterans, really turning back the clock and just looking so confident and efficient with his game and putting a lot of defenders on notice, I reckon. There are probably some that think, he's 32, probably not the peak of his powers. I don't think I've seen him play better footy, Nico.
I don't think he has. And again, we talked about it in recent weeks, but the space he manages to create inside attacking 50, his gut running is superb. Again, if you just ISO viewed him inside that attacking half, the amount of leads that he gets ignored by, not by just anything other than not the right place or right time, but there's so many opportunities for him to get the footy. And if it's not him reaching out to take big marks, he's there at ground level just ready to mop things up. So, I couldn't be prouder of the way that Jamie's going about his footy right now. And he's, again, a big reason why we have a 9-2 record. Last one, Will Hayes made his debut,
Yes.
which was nice to see. Finished with 6 tackles. It was always going to be hard for him to get into the game early, but he did manage to hold his own, I felt, throughout the night. Obviously still a work in progress, I feel, but a nice opportunity for him to have a shot in the senior side.
Yeah, the first debutant for the Pies this season, so again, another side of a very difficult team to break into.
We had about 7 or 8 at this point last year.
Yeah, fair income. So I think those guys as well that have come in and out of the VFL system, even though we finished 9th last year and we're all a bit disappointed by that, are probably having better seasons when they get their opportunity at the level.
Yep.
You know, your Sullivans, Ed Allen, Markov when he comes in, these types of guys. So it's probably paying dividends, is what I'm trying to say, in terms of why I've got so much depth this year. But yeah, young Hayes, I think he's going to be comfortable at the level, Nick. I reckon he's the type of small forward who makes good decisions, and he's probably going to have to wait a little bit longer for a regular crack at it, given we have a host of small forwards that we can select.
Yeah.
And none of them are retiring anytime soon, bar maybe Jamie Elliott.
Wow, that's the thing.
But yeah, I think Will Hayes had his introduction to footy with a big chase down tackle from George Wardlaw, and I thought, welcome to the AFL, young fella. After that, but
he had a great tackle in the final term.
He came home strong, didn't he?
Yes.
So his forward pressure, I think the coaches would have liked that, and just good for him to have a taste. I think there's probably a few other guys like Harry Di Mattia and Oscar Steen.
Chaz West, hopefully soon.
Chaz West, absolutely. Really can't wait for his debut. Hopefully that comes this season. So incredible to think that we've got probably 5 or 6 other fringe players that are all knocking on the door.
100%.
And hopefully that comes in the back half of the year.
Certainly. All right, let's get your votes then from Saturday night's win against the Roos at Marvel, please.
Yeah, I've gone 1 vote for Nick Daicos. Hope he gets that in the Brownlow account on the night too. 2 votes I've gone to Jamie Elliott and 3 to Ned Long. Your votes?
Very similar, but I didn't put Nick in the top 3. He hasn't made the cut. I thought Billy Frampton had to get at least 1 vote. Had to, just with the way that he was playing. And then same with you, 2 to Jamie and 3 to Ned. I thought they were the clear 2 standouts in my opinion.
Is Jamie Elliott top 3 for the Copeland right now? When you think about his returns this
I'll tell you what. I think...
Bit of a random shout, but...
Darcy Cameron, definitely.
Lock.
I reckon Ned's definitely pushing.
Top 5 for sure.
Josh Daicos would also be around the mark.
I reckon Josh has had the most consistent season so far. But
and
Jamie Elliott.
Jamie.
Like almost 30 goals after...
Well, he's been one of the few that have played every game so far this year for us. So
yeah, which is a feat in itself.
Absolutely.
So, anyway.
Very nice stuff. All right, well, let's get what the fans, how they reacted to our win against North. So let's chuck on the headsets.
We're going back for the SpeakPie.
SpeakPie. It has been rocking the amount that we've been getting through. So thank you, everyone that does get involved with SpeakPie. This might also be a good time to mention we're not far away from 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. 950 odd. We're very close to that big figure. It would help us enormously. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed, please do so. It does mean a lot for you all to get involved. Continue to listen and give us some ratings on our podcasts, of course, but would love the chance to get to 1K in the next month or so. So the only way we can do that is by your support. So thank you for those that are, but if you aren't subscribed, be sure to get involved. We'd love to. So just a little bit of a heads up there. But let's get to SpeakPie. As I said, we've had many people come through with their voice reactions. We can't play them all, but we do thank everyone that sends it through. We try to mix and match as we can. We're going to start here with Geordie. So let's see what Geordie had to say to kick things off for this week.
Do you guys hear that? Is that an ambulance or is that just the Collingwood team bus? Boy, was that a game. I was trembling when I saw Maynard taken out. 2 of our key defenders out. Probably weren't going to beat anyone, let alone North. They play it like it's their grand final. Yet, after 3 quarters, just absolutely put on the Jets, burn North. What was it, 45 points? What a game that was. That was genuinely impressive. I hadn't written us off, but I'd accepted the loss. Just with those outs and how North normally play it. But Billy Frampton, those 3 quarters, he is solely responsible, just about, as to not allowing us to have the same score as last year when we versed North. He was exceptional. Daicos, Ned Long, even Josh was amazing. That was a solid performance. Billy Elliott dropping a bag as well. How good. Thorough win. Couple of good games now to come. Hawks, I think next week's going to be massive, and then we're into the bye. This season is just looking up and up and up. Cheers, guys. Love the podcast.
Thanks, Geordie. How concerned were you when Maynard was out of that side?
Yeah, we didn't talk about that in the review, did we? No. It's probably a bit of an oversight from us, but I've held the view that he, not a time bomb, but when playing with an injury like plantar fasciitis, which he's carried from, it's been no secret that he's carrying it. It was just a case of whether he could manage it and not see it flare up, which for an entire season is going to be quite the feat. I'm just praying that his scans come back, and if they show a bit of inflammation, that's okay. It's just like, how bad is it, and is there any structural problems? Because
am I right in saying that they would rather a clean break in this instance than a fracture or a partial?
Look, for a plantar fasciitis injury, well, my understanding is that it's more to do with like the connective tissue that can play up in the foot rather than like a structural damage to like a piece of cartilage or bone. I might have that wrong, but it's managing the loads so that it doesn't continue to flare up, and that's what Tommy Mitchell's had huge issues with in terms of not overcooking it. So let's just pray that whatever's happened with that scan for Bruzzy, that it's a shorter term prospect on the sidelines, because he is crucial to our premiership aspirations.
Absolutely. All right, next up is Gabba, as in Gabba. So I don't know if it's the ground or what. Thank you, Gabba.
What a game, lads. What a fucking game. Gabba here. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but sorry if I'm not. I can't believe I ever lost faith in Collingwood. I was just screaming my head off in that last quarter. What a bloody gun Ned Long, the Nong, is. Every time he comes out, I want to hear a gong. I don't want to hear anyone say anything about him bad. He is absolutely fantastic. I think Frampton is the best lockdown defender in the league. Incredible stuff. Go Pies.
In the league.
That's a massive call.
Gee whiz. We've knighted Billy Frampton.
Yep, so Sir William, and now he's the best in the league. At this rate, he's winning the Brownlow.
All-Australian fullback.
Oh, God.
Yep.
That's very good. Next up, we'll have Lockie. Thank you, Lockie.
I reckon we felt the impact of some of the players we were missing, but on the whole, we had our defenders lock it down when we really needed to. Our forwards converted when we got the opportunities, particularly in the second half. And, proud of the boys. All right, up the Pies.
Yep. Nice and simple there from Lockie. Thank you.
Short and sweet.
That's what we like. Angelique, thank you.
Not going to lie, absolutely shit myself until the last quarter when they came good. But Ned Long is a beast, absolute beast. And Membry and Jamie were standouts as well in front of goal. Go Pies.
Membry 3 goals too. Also someone we didn't mention, but I thought it was solid.
Loves the marvel, I reckon, from all the games he's played
over
the journey at St Kilda. But Angelique just took me back to how I actually felt through the first half, and I was really frustrated.
On edge.
Really frustrated by this game of footy. We just couldn't get our way, and I was hoping it would have happened sooner. So thank you for that, Angelique.
All right, let's go to Tiana. This is a very short one, but thank you.
Go the Pies! Let's get this thing done in Tassie Stadium so we can have the Pies here in Hobart. Go the Pies.
Okay.
Yes.
Bit of Tassie love.
So,
geez, there's a lot of problems going on there at the moment.
With the stadium?
Yep. Big time.
What's the...
well, the main thing is the roof.
Up.
The roof.
Because you can't be playing in winter in Tassie, can you?
That's the idea, but the public don't want a roof because it's going to cost a shitload more.
So the taxpayers are going to be slugged with a roof they don't want.
And then if they don't get a stadium, the AFL won't give them a team. So, yes, a lot going on. But anyway, that's not our problem for now, so good luck to them. But for people like Tiana, hopefully that works out and the Pies can come to Tassie because we're not going there any other way.
No,
that's for sure.
No.
This is from Daniel. So thank you, Daniel, for sending this one in.
On the way home on the train, can't believe it. 8 players out from their starting lineup, and after half time,
now arriving at dinner.
After 3/4 time, what was it, 8 goals, 1. We destroyed them. And to top it off, what a great Saturday. The Scum, the Filth, lose, and they are 2 games out of the 8. Go Pies.
That was a fun watch before the Pies game, I have to admit.
The doubleheader
The doubleheader at Marvel, God.
Carlton lost into a Collingwood win.
Jeez, yeah, they were very ordinary to lose. That was very fun. But they're going to be gifted with some games against West Coast and North as per. Anyway, not about them. Couple more to wrap up. Our favourite Jake, he's back. He's become a regular, so let's get him on once again. Thank you, Jake.
Thanks, boys. You have a good night. No worries. Bye. Sorry, boys. Just had to file a missing persons case. I've lost the lid, boys. I've lost the lid. It's gone. Can't find it. Nah, all jokes aside, boys, what a game. Honestly, we played exceptional. Ned Long, what a player. What a player. He's my pie that caught my eye for this whole season. Like the commentator said, he man of the match, best on ground. Daicos brothers, it was like 64 touches between the both of them. What else, man? Like Jamie Elliott, the 5, adding to his tally. Something about Pez when he gets his long-range goals like that just gives me goosebumps. So I don't know what it is. I reckon this is our year, boys. I don't want to get a little too cocky too early, but my lid's off and it's missing. And I think
Still
we've
missing.
got it for the year. I think we've done. Well, I think we're going to do it. What a win. Hopefully next week we can go into the Hawks game and just humble them as well. But we'll see how it goes.
So he's not cocky, but he said about 4 times in that excerpt that the lid was off.
Fantastic.
That's what we like. Thanks, Jake. We're finishing with Bodie here. So thank you very much, Bodie, for sending this one in.
Tell you what, boys, final sign's just gone. I'm on a random mine site in WA. In fact, the last time I remember being at this mine site, we beat GWS in the prelim, wasn't it? I think it was prelim in 23. And it's just good to get a good win. I can't believe it took us till the 4th quarter to learn how to fucking kick between the big sticks, but tell you what. I needed more than just my 4 allowed mid-strength beers, I can tell you that, boys. But it's good to get the dub. I'll tell you what, Nick Daicos Brownlow watch might have to take a pause this year. I think we've got to look at the Ned Long Brownlow watch. Jesus Christ, he is an absolute tank. And how good's Leggy kicking his first fucking goal? Oh, let's go. I love my Leggy. I love my Leggy Pies Nation shirt. Anyways, keep it up, boys.
There we go. Thanks, Bodie.
I'm not sure if they were mid-strength, Nico.
No. Judging by that, I'm not entirely sure.
It just made me think it's only work for people who are watching the YouTube, of course. But
subscribe.
The lid, is it?
The bottle cap.
Yeah.
That was donated. I had the card last week, but someone out Northland wanted a shop. Shout out to them.
Jakey's looking for his lid. I reckon it
might be
just
here
on our wall.
Oh,
so
jeez. All right. Well, I might have to give that
in case
one away.
it goes missing.
Yes, very nice. All right. I'll thank actually Leggy.
Yeah.
Nice little goal celebration.
Yeah. Well, what an afternoon. Don't think you're even playing,
No.
and then all of a sudden you are, and all of a sudden you're kicking a set shot that you probably shouldn't be hitting as a halfback. But
That's when you knew the game was won.
The curl was on, and yeah, great energy that he brings, as has been mentioned, and just nice to see the fun side of footy come out whenever Oleg Markov is on the ground. So I'm not sure how many more games he'll play once we have a few more come in, Nico, but he did bring a little bit to the table. Is it enough to stay in the best 22, 23? Time will tell.
Well, Maynard out. Might be sneaky little opportunity. We'll wait and see. And then, of course, you might remember last week when we did the SpeakPie about Marcus from Dallas. They were playing the American, the US national team, and they just let us know that they won with a goal on the final siren to defeat the US national team, and that Marcus was best on ground for the Devils. So well done to the North Texas Devils.
So they've kicked one after the siren.
Kicked one after the siren. Real Jamie Elliott style to get that win. So good on him. Great to hear. Hopefully Marcus can keep sending some more in throughout the SpeakPie. But thank you, everyone that does get involved. Let's swing across now to our guest, the margin, and Lukey, you send it through. There was only one that picked 45 points on the dot, and that's J Huey 23 on Twitter. So shout out to J Huey. Good job there. 45 points. Pretty gutsy to tip such a big margin, considering we always like to make it close against North, but a good effort.
3/4 time, that would probably not have been the selection that looked likely, but a demolition job in the end. So well done to, who was that?
J Huey 23.
Well done to them.
All right, and then moving to our Guess the Crowd competition. I can't remember off the top of my head, it was about a 40-odd thousand crowd that we ended up having at Marvel. Many more Collingwood supporters than there were North supporters, so that says a lot about how things are going, of course. But Lukey, again, thanks for sent it through. We're going to speak to Peter Wallace, who was our Guess the Crowd competition winner. So without further ado, wasting no time, let's give him a call.
Hello.
Peter.
Yes.
Nicholas here from the Pies Nation podcast. You're our Guess the Crowd competition winner for this week, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem, mate. Were you one of those 40-odd thousand that made the trek to Marvel? Did you witness the great stadium that was?
I did. I trundled on down there, and it was nice to be there several hours after Carlton got done, which was good.
Yeah. Well, that may have been setting the tone for us getting the win, which was always nice to see Carlton lose beforehand, mate. How did you view things from where you sat? It was obviously a bit of a tough opening half, but we're able to pull away late.
Yeah, it was. It was an interesting game for 3/4, but I was actually saying to a friend, I wouldn't be surprised if Fly's shown the team rumble in the jungle. We seem to have this rope-a-dope sort of approach where we take the hits for 3/4 and then just sort of, once they're tired and frustrated, just lay the knockout blow, which is it's been really good to watch.
Well, it certainly seemed the case, particularly with the frustration that was probably rising in the opening half with North playing a bit of a possession game. But the team defence stood pretty tall and were able to only concede 65 points by the end of the match. Peter, how impressed have you been with the backline? We've just been speaking about it here on this episode for the last little bit, but they just seem to be working wonders at the moment.
Oh, it seems every game that someone different standing up, and Billy Frampton is just having a season of a lifetime at the moment, and he just keeps going from strength to strength, which has been really good to watch. I know he's been the whipping boy at times, but no, it's really impressive to see how he's sort of come out of his skin and hopefully filling that Nathan Murphy role a little bit.
Good call, Peter. Marcus here. Thank you for joining us. We talked about earlier in this episode as well how at halftime something must have been said across the coaching lines that really brought out a different flavour to Collingwood's performance. We reckon more corridor and a more attacking style of footy. Did you see anything that might have been said in the coach's room that really allowed us to put on that scoreboard pressure from the third term onwards?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think obviously Ned Long was sort of carrying that midfield through the first sort of half. I think that someone obviously got into Nick Daicos' ear because we were saying at half time, we just need a Nick game, and then all of a sudden he just comes out and goes bang, which was nice to see after the last couple of weeks when he's been heavily tagged.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that Nick is starting to put together some better games based on match fitness, so we're very happy about that. The other one that we would love to hear your thoughts about is the skunk, Tim Membry. No stranger to Marvel. How did you see his game, and how do you think he's complementing this forward line as we draw closer to the bye?
He's an absolute bull. It's like having another check in the forward line, really. He just attacks everything with such vigour. But then what makes it even better is just his accuracy in front of goal, which is something we always haven't had. So it's nice to have someone who can line up and slot it through the middle. And then him playing alongside, obviously, Jamie, I think is just drinking from the fountain of youth at the moment.
That's a great way to put it. And you're right. Jamie and Tim have probably been our two most accurate forwards this year. And unfortunately, Checkers hasn't been able to really hit those points and has struggled at times in front of goal. But I think what's been most impressive, Peter, is the fact that this forward line has been able to work so well despite a lot of different personnel going through it. We're getting contributors from all over the ground. We saw Harry Perryman hit the scoreboard as well on Saturday. But do you feel like there's other reasons behind what's making this forward line click at the moment?
I think it's not up to one person, which is always a good thing. I mean, you see those teams that just rely on a key forward, which means the midfielders can sort of divert their eyes a little bit and just pick the best target, which is they're not sort of focused on any particular forward, which makes it pretty hard for teams to defend, I think.
Another good call. Thanks, Peter. Stepping off the field now, like how are you viewing the club in terms of the optics, the way the club is being administered? I think it's been one of the better patches we've had. I think as Collingwood supporters, we're used to seeing Herald Sun articles for the wrong reasons. But how have you enjoyed seeing the Pies be in the press for, I guess, positive reasons, if at all? And is there a sense that we are tracking in a good direction with good leadership off the field as well from your eyes?
100%. I mean, you hear it all the time that stability at all levels of the club is what sort of leads to success. And yeah, it's nice not waking up in the morning and seeing us in the headlines for the wrong reason. It's always that thing you hate when you see a headline about some sort of football club, and when it's not Collingwood, I take a sigh of relief most of the time.
And as a follow-up question, who do you enjoy seeing in the Herald Sun for the wrong reasons?
Well, it'd have to be Carlton, obviously. Would be the number one, I think. But any other club bar us, and I'm happy.
I hope you haven't jinxed us, Marcus. I really hope that you just haven't. We're not going to see something tomorrow morning pop up.
2 words for you, Craig McRae.
All right. I'll take your word for it. Peter, last one from me before we let you go. It's been great having you on this week's episode. We'd love to hear a bit more about your journey into becoming a Pies fan. Give us a bit of the summary, who you grew up and loved watching, and what's made you become such a passionate supporter like you are today.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a non-football family, but my uncle was passionate Pies and he just bought me gear as a kid. But then once I sort of turned 18 and could take myself to games, I've pretty much been a Legends member since day one, and haven't really ever missed many games. But obviously been to a few losing grand finals and a few winning ones. But it's unbelievable. I hate it when football's not on, and I look forward to every weekend when it is.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's funny how sometimes when you go from not being involved with footy and then all of a sudden the switch flicks and you're passionate. Any players that stand out to you over the journey, mate, that you really enjoyed watching?
Look, there's been a few over the journey. I was a big Jimmy Clement fan back in the day.
Nice.
But probably at the moment, look, it's hard to go past Daicos, but I also love like Bruzzy and McCreary. I just love that fierce attack on the footy whenever it happens. So they're probably two of my favourites at the moment. And Ned Long is slowly creeping up there, I've got to tell you.
Yeah, well, the way he's been playing, I think he's going to be many people's favourites in the weeks to come, let alone the year. So excited to see how he continues to thrive. Peter, been wonderful to have you on. Great to reminisce, and hopefully we're celebrating plenty more wins with you this year.
100%. I love the pod, boys, and thanks for having me on.
No worries. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Peter.
Cheers. Thanks, boys.
That was Peter joining us as part of our Guess the Crowd competition. That could be you if you guess the crowd closest, so keep an eye out for the social media posts in the lead up to each game. Have your best crack at it, and if you are closest to the pin, that will be you joining us as part of our Guess the Crowd. Some good points, mate, I felt by Peter there.
Yeah, he was on point, wasn't he? Clearly aware of what's happening in football circles and watching for a long time, so nice to have that experienced lens brought to the pod, Nico.
We've had a really good group, I feel like, of Guess the Crowd competition winners throughout this year. So hopefully those that are getting closest to the pin continue to bring that to us each and every week. It's been nice to see, that is for sure. All right, swinging across to the VFL. Unfortunately, not much good news there, Marcus. We got a pummeling by North Melbourne at Victoria Park on Sunday, going down by 72 points. Had some great individual performances, which we'll touch on the surge in just a moment. But pretty dark day, although a few late changes may have caused a few issues as well.
Yeah, no question. That would have brought some uncertainty to the VFL squad. Almost a role reversal from what happened in the ones, with North winning big time, 72-point victors over the VFL Pies. Strong performance from Harry DiMatteo. Probably saw more midfield minutes once again, but for the full lowdown, take it away.
Kangas jumped the Pies early, however some good work from the Marnie brothers saw the ball delivered up forward where Ryan Mason was able to mark and kick our first goal. Both teams struggled early with their movement of the ball, Collingwood trying their run and carry game through the centre of the ground, but it was a scrappy match early with plenty of mistakes and turnovers from both sides in defence. The game quickly changed in the second term. The Pies looked lifeless while the Kangas pulled away with 7 unanswered goals, courtesy of their slick centre clearance work and marking dominance up forward, Collingwood only managing 3 behinds in the second term. They were noticeably dysfunctional in the centre and defence, unable to move the ball forward with any purpose, and when they did, the delivery was poor. The lack of pressure was evident as the Pies were second to the ball at every contest and were down by 48 points at the main break. After half-time, the misery continued. He doesn't mince his words, Serge. He really goes in with the kill. As the Pies' work rate continued to drop and the Kangas did as they pleased, North with another 6 goals while the Pies were held scoreless. The Marnie brothers, Di Mattia and Jacob Ryan, worked hard. However, Collingwood were outclassed by a cleaner, more efficient Kangaroos outfit. 87 points down going into the final term. Collingwood finally scored and ended up outscoring the Roos to avoid a triple-figure loss. We kicked 6-4 to 4-1 in the last quarter. Started to win some centre clearances thanks to Harry Di Mattia, Oscar Steen and Tom Mitchell. Steen kicked 2 goals to add some respectability to the scoreboard, but we ended up going down by 73 points. It was an uncharacteristic Pies performance and a hard watch. The work rate was extremely disappointing. Too many players letting the game down. So, disappointing by the sounds of it. Serge really upset by the fact of us not getting the job done. But a couple of individual highlights, as we said. One of those, Harry Di Mattia, who continues to go from strength to strength.
Yeah, no doubt. Another guy who's probably waiting in the wings and will benefit, I believe, in sort of your season 2027 from having played a lot of AFL footy. I think Josh Daicos is the template that I often refer back to. But yeah, no doubt he's getting more midfield minutes as we've had some personnel changes over the last couple of weeks. Another one I wanted to mention was Tommy Mitchell, of course. Just having a look at his stat sheet, Nico. 18 disposals. Guess how many of those were handballs?
17.
Very close. There was 16 handballs.
Wow.
So what does that say about someone with a foot injury? I'm not sure. Is his focus just getting his nose in the trough and dishing out where he can, but promising to see that he's clearly got through unscathed. I'm sure we would have heard about it by now. Had that not been the case, and we'll see whether he pulls the socks up against the Hawks in the ones.
Yep.
But we do play Box Hill in the reserves. Nico, 2:05 on Saturday down at Box Hill City Oval. So
Lovely.
they're top of the table, Box Hill, as is often the case in the VFL. So it doesn't get any easier for the VFL Pies, but that'll be one to watch after the ones play on Friday night for sure.
Absolutely. 7-1 Box Hill as well, so it'll be a tough task.
Very well.
Before we move on to a couple of other little things, mid-season draft on Wednesday, we're going to have 2 spots because the club confirmed just moments ago that Harvey Harrison will be put on the long-term injury list, which means we won't expect to see him back in 2025, which means we're going to have 2 picks in the mid-season draft. Now, 2 players that have been touted or have been linked, to Collingwood in this year's mid-season draft is Riley Mason, who spoke about in the VFL,
having
of course.
a very good season.
17 goals in 7 VFL games, 195-centimetre forward. Someone I think that could come in pretty confidently into our lineup. And, I mean, you only have to look at Ned Long and the work that gets done in the VFL program for someone like him to come and have an impact. The other one is Archer May from Subiaco over in WA. 198-centimetre forward, 12 goals in 6 waffle games. His secondary position is the ruck. And fun fact, his mum's partner is currently Dermot Brereton. So a bit of footy pedigree there. But it looks like we're targeting these key forward types heading into the mid-season draft, which seems like the right call in hindsight.
No doubt. I think we've called for more key position players at our disposal over the next coming seasons and needing to develop them, Nico. So whatever we go with, I don't think we need any more small forwards. I don't think we need any more halfback flankers, and key position players should certainly be the focus. But in terms of what happens with the mid-season draft, do you think that this is the type of draft where we go to top up players that we want to just stick in the VFL, develop, or do we need to have a bit more of a lens of if we lose a tall player, whether that's in forward or defence, we need someone who's a bit more experienced and has played a lot of reserve footy so that they can fill that void? Because with an ageing list, I do wonder, and Tassie coming in soon, I feel like these picks are really important.
Yeah.
And we have been known to get them right. A la Johnny Noble, Ash Johnson's had some success. So what's your thoughts around that one?
That better not be a good sign. Yikes.
Is that the turning point of our season,
Oh,
Nico?
no. Maybe you jinxed us again, Marcus. Who knows? That's not ideal. To answer your question, I think we're in a bit of a luxurious position in terms of the depth that we've got. I think if we were talking 12 months ago, then we're probably in a bit of strife in terms of what we're trying trying to achieve, and might have to be a bit more general in terms of what players we go to. It might just be a best player in the draft as alone to being a bit more specific about where we lean towards. I don't think it has to be somebody that's ready-made. I think I would rather a bit of a longer-term prospect. So these key forwards tend to be that. So it might be a case of then having someone of an Archer May, for example, give him a bit of time in the reserves at the back end of this year, at the start of next year, and then hopefully form him into someone that is looking into play a bit more of a key position role.
Yeah.
Something that I want to take note of, there's been a lot of talk about Darcy Cameron potentially going back to WA. West Coast are very interested.
Yep.
Mason Cox is on the wrong side of 30. I don't imagine he's going to be around for much longer. And then Oscar Steen's not quite the finished product yet. So I look at that ruck depth. That's probably our weakest point at the moment. So if there's someone that can fill that potentially, Illaru Smith's obviously someone as well in that system too. But just something to keep an eye on.
Just the tall stocks, exactly.
Yes.
I think with whatever we go with when we get an opportunity for these selections, I think we might have one NGA selection whose name escapes me right now that's coming through the Chargers that might be an option in the coming drafts. I have to check back on that. But crucial that the tall timber picks we get opportunity to, that we get right, because you're absolutely on the money with some departures likely in the coming seasons, if not by trade, then certainly by retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. VFLW, the girls were able to get the win over North Melbourne, winning by 13 points, 7-4 to 5-3. We were down at three-quarter time, kept the Roos to just one behind in the final term to go and get the job done. So lovely to see the Pies get the win on that occasion. And the wheelchair competition kicked off a couple of weeks ago. We had the bye round one, but we were able to get the win on... I know, typical of us to get the bye. We were able to win by 76 points over Hawthorn.
Great start.
So that's a big start. 21-5. So might have to get some few accuracy tips from the wheelchair side, because that was very impressive for us to have gotten the job done. So good stuff overall from them. All right. Well, we're just about to wrap up, but you need to have a game to finish. It's almost part and parcel with the Pies Nation podcast this year. But you've got nobody to lean on. So you're all on your own here.
Just my shoulders, Nico.
Just your
carrying
shoulders.
the weight of the world on my shoulders.
All right. Well, different type of game this time, seeing as it is just you and me. But I want you to tell me if these Collingwood players have ever polled a Brownlow vote.
Okay.
Bit of Brownlow talk with Ned Long.
Yep.
So I thought
that's
it was
where my head
topical.
went. Very good.
So I'm going to list you some players, and you just got to tell me if you think they've polled about a Brownlow vote in their career or if they have not. Chris Dawes.
Dorsal. Yes.
Correct. He has one vote.
I was thinking to myself, if he has, it's probably just one, but okay.
Yep. Against Port, round 15, 2010, 3 goals, 11 disposals.
There you go for those playing at home.
James Aish. Collingwood only, by the way.
Yep, sure. No.
He has.
Okay.
One vote as well. Came against Richmond, round 20, 2016, 18 disposals, 1 goal.
That's a very, very generous
Yes.
one vote performance.
Must have been an average game.
Yeah.
Brent McCaffer.
Hadn't heard that name for a while. Calf, I'll say no.
Correct. Has not received a Brownlow vote.
No votes for
I
Calf.
thought maybe for some of his tagging games, but I don't think umpires really looked at that too much.
Yeah.
Simon Prestigiacomo.
Perigomo. Geez, I want to say yes because of his cult hero status. I'm going to say yes.
Correct. 5 votes he has received in his career.
5 votes. Most of that's some lockdown jobs and just...
I'll tell you quickly.
Done very well because defenders typically don't poll Nico in the Brownlow, so that's impressive.
Round 22, 2000 versus Essendon. He got 1 vote.
Okay.
I don't know how because Lloyd kicked 4 goals, 5.
4 goals, 5?
Yep. He got 2 votes against Richmond, round 8, 2005. He had a career high 18 disposals and kept Richo to 1 goal, 4.
18 disposals for Presti.
Wow.
That's, yeah.
And then he got 1 vote against Carlton, round 17, 2009. 6 disposals, 4 marks. Fev, 1 goal, 1.
Okay. So clearly did some good work on key forwards.
5 votes.
How you get votes when Lloyd kicks Yeah,
I don't know.
It's beyond me.
And Essendon in 2000 were a juggernaut as well. So
absolutely.
Anyway,
at their peak.
A couple more to finish. Nathan Brown.
Oh, no.
Correct. Well done. Last one. Jack Frost.
Yes.
Bang. Spot on.
Correct.
Anzac Day against Essendon,
Okay.
2015. 8 disposals.
Yeah. He just came and went, didn't he?
Yep.
Concussion from memory.
So you only got one wrong.
Yeah, I'm pretty
In the
happy
end?
with that. I reckon the other lads can stay home next week and I'll just
killing it.
Take care of business myself. But very good, Nico. Good to be flexible with the game styles and contributing very well to the socials as well, these games. So
That's what I bring to the table.
Thank you for the trivia option once more.
No problems. What I will do, we'll have a preview for the Hawks game coming up later this week. But Marcus, thank you for joining me today.
Always a pleasure, Nico. Thank you.
Till next week, I've been Nicholas Sacco. You've been listening to or watching the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. We love all our listeners and viewers across Australia that enjoy the Pies Nation podcast, but we love our overseas viewers and listeners as well. And one of those that have gotten on board are the boys and girls over at the North Texas Devils in the US, who are looking for players to join their sides ahead of the 2025 season. Based in Dallas, Texas, and established back in 2020, they're hoping to bolster awareness of Australian rules football over in the US. And any of those listening or watching our podcast that are heading over to the US at some point this year, the one team for you to get involved with is the North Texas Devils. We'll give you all the information in our subscription descriptions, I should say, across our podcasts and YouTube. But a great opportunity to get involved with some Aussie rules and teach the Yanks the best game in the world. And you can do so thanks to the North Texas Devils.